And, it was about dancing. And I beelined for the dance floor. Some people got drinks with their fake IDs or not fake IDs, depending on how old they were. And I went right to the floor and danced at least 3 hours without stopping.
So, you know that I love me some cheesy, poetic imagery and fancy crap like that. I don't know what I'm talking about. You know I'm cheesy, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And this week, I think maybe I found the cheesiest thing ever. And I say that as a good thing. Like, obviously, cheesy has particular connotations, but I love some cheese. Right, what am I talking about? Well, I am talking about the dance floor. And I'm talking about the magic of the dance floor. And I'm talking about someone who, up until the point they found themselves on a hot, sweaty dance floor at the Backstreet in Atlanta, Georgia, felt as though they didn't belong to the queer scene. But suddenly, standing there on said dance floor, sweat dripping down their face, everything made sense. And they found their place. And they knew who they were. And they knew that they belonged. Oh, I told you it was cheesy. It's very cheesy. Anyway, what am I talking about? Who am I talking about? I am talking about the author Miah Jeffra, who joined me to talk about how the bar scene just was not hitting the spot. Every time he went out, he felt like an outsider and alone and blech, like he didn't make sense to people. And it all clicked. It all made sense when he started to make his way to the dance floor. Ooh, I love some cheesiness. Right, before we get into it, just to carry on the theme of cheesiness, I want to ask a favor of you. I want you to get out your phone. I want you to look at your contacts, see if there's anyone who's really important to you, but who you just haven't made the time to talk to recently. Send them a text message and tell them that you're thinking of them. And if you really want to embrace this theme of cheesiness, why don't you also tell them why they're important to you and what they mean to you? That would be brave. I think you're brave. Why don't you do it? Okay, let's get into the episode. My name is Kay Anderson. This is Lost Spaces, the podcast that is all about memories from lost queer venues. And we're about to find out a little bit more from Miah. Let's start where we normally end in these conversations. And I want you to think back to 1995. I want you to think back to yourself as a baby gay. And I want you to imagine you're having a conversation with that person. What advice would you give him?
What would I say to 1995 Maya? Stop wearing clothes that are too big for you and enjoy the fact that you're so easy with your body and don't be so self-conscious about it.
Oh, those statements seem to be contradictory.
I know, right? There was a part of me as a baby gay. I was so exuberant when I was riding the wave of my own enthusiasm. I had a lot of freedom with the way I expressed, especially because I was a dancer. But then when I would look at myself at moments, when I was being more aware rather than just in the moment, I would freeze because I thought I was being too much.
So too much in terms of like mannerisms and behavior?
Yeah, my enthusiasm.
Ah,
Sometimes I felt like I was taking up too much space. And then I would, kind of close inward.
yeah. So that would make you overly aware of your behavior and close off.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Do you still feel that way?
Mm-mm. No, but I have adjusted my character over the years where it probably is. It it comes off as a little more possessed.
Possessed by who?
Myself.
Oh, okay. So not some like ghost from the 18th century.
I mean, that'd be preferable.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be fun. All those old timey words
Mm-hmm.
you could use. Okay, so help round out this picture for me and
Mm-hmm.
describe the baby gay Miah from '95. Who is he? What's going on in his life?
He newly transplanted himself for college in Atlanta, Georgia, from Baltimore, Maryland. He grew up in low income housing in Baltimore to with a single mom, and dance was his outlet. He was a hip hop dancer, and then goes to college and studies music and performance. And so he was so enthusiastic about everything. First person in his family to go to college, gets this opportunity moving hundreds of miles away, to do something that he always wanted to study because he never was able to formally study it. Couldn't afford dance classes, didn't have a music program in his high school, that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, everything just felt so much like an opportunity. And, the enthusiasm ushered forth with it. Just like, wow, I can do this, I can do this. And then was also meeting people the same way, just like meeting them kind of full tilt boogie, like, hello, life is amazing. Let's do stuff.
Full tilt boogie. So, what do you remember most about your first
Yeah.
days in Atlanta?
Feeling this sense of anything is possible, feeling the sense of life beginning in many respects. The very first day I went to college, I came out. It was something I wanted to do, but I didn't feel like the environment where I was suitable for that. So yeah, just feeling very liberated in some ways, even though I didn't know anything.
And when you say the first day of college is the day you came out, is that you were just presenting to new people as out, or did you have
Hmm.
conversations with people from your life before?
Not really. My high school girlfriend, I told her, formally.
Oh, formally, like you sent a formal letter.
It was a phone call. We're definitely, in the late 20th century by that point. I did not send a pigeon telegram.
So was she the first person that you told?
Hmm.
How did that go?
Yeah. She said, essentially, I think I knew, but then she was also like, but you seemed very enthusiastic during sex. You seemed to like it.
There is a pattern forming here.
Lots of enthusiasm. That's gonna be the title of the podcast. It went well though. She stayed a lifelong friend.
Oh, brilliant. So early days in Atlanta, you're there, you're a bundle of energy. You're freshly out of the closet. I was going to say oven then. Why don't we come out of the oven? You're freshly out of the closet. Is there an imperative? Is there a motivation within you to go out and meet people?
You know what? No. I was in a bubble in college. I was so excited to be around other people that were interested in self growth and who were curious, who were either A, artistically inclined or intellectually motivated, who wanted to talk about books, who wanted to talk about culture and society, even though I was just beginning to form a nomenclature for all that. I didn't have that where I grew up. So I was so fixated on meeting the people that were just in my immediate community in college initially. And if you mean was I excited to meet other gay people out in the city? Sure, but at that point I was just interested in connecting to people on a personal level and forming those deep relationships.
And did that creep up on you at all then? Did you get to a point where you were like, yeah, I'm going to meet some gays?
Yeah. It was my junior year of college, and I was living in the dorms, and all I had done at that point was kissed and fooled around with boys, and none of them claimed to be gay, and I felt
Convenient.
lonely. So I remember I had some plastic bottle vodka, and I was hanging out with people in my dorm room, and then I felt this overwhelming sense of loneliness, and I climbed the tree that was in front of my dorm, and I sat up there and I kind of cried.
Oh,
And one of my friends was down below and said, "Maya, what are you doing?" And I remember saying, "I'm drunk and I need to meet other gay people." And so that's what kind of started it.
oh, and how did they respond?
They said, "Well, it's Atlanta. There's bound to be." And so I started going out.
How long did it take you to pluck up the courage to go out?
As long as it took me to get a fake ID.
Oh, did you have like a fake name and everything, or was it just a fake date of birth?
It was a fake name because, like, for $10, I scored an old driver's license. And the person was supposed to be 25, 26. What was his name? Oh, I haven't thought about this in so long. I think it was Kenny something.
Oh, yeah, you could pull off Kenny, I think.
Why not? Yeah, all white guys look the same.
Ah, so you've got this fake ID and you're like, okay, I'm going to the club. I'm gonna find out what this is all about. What do you remember
Mhm.
about getting ready to go? Like those anticipatory feelings?
Well, the first time I went out was not to an actual club. That would come later, and that's where I would find joy. The first time was a gay bar. I had this interesting duality at the time, especially with me recalling myself then. One of them was I just had my own style, and it was very
Energetic?
energetic and clothes that just felt fun.
Ah,
It
okay.
wasn't about looking stylish. It wasn't like, oh, I need to show off my assets, try to look sexy. It was just like, this shirt's fun. It's bright orange. So it wasn't that I was nervous about how I looked. It was more just the anticipation of what it means to be in a room full of gay men,
Yeah.
you know?
But it's interesting that you've brought the way that you dressed a few times in this conversation. Were you aware of people perceiving and responding to you differently because of how you were dressed? Or is that something that in retrospect you can
Yeah, I think it's more in retrospect. It's like, me as a queer in his 40s who remembers this time. I think I was a little bit inscrutable to the gay male community.
ah
I didn't dress with a sense of the perceived and acceptable fashions. I didn't behave either twinkish or like hypermasculine. I was kind of sprightly and goofy and kind of hippie-ish, if you will. So yeah, I look back on that time and I wasn't very popular in gay male spaces. I wasn't desired. I wasn't approached. I never met people at the gay bars at all. Like
so
it.
I know I'm kind of belaboring this point, so sorry. Are you saying
No,
that
it's okay.
that was primarily because of how you were presenting?
I feel like it was. I could be absolutely wrong,
Yeah.
right? Because there's so many things you don't know when you're new in the community. But what I was coming to understand, or at least based on my observations, was I didn't fit the mold
Yeah.
to any particular kind of type. And as a result, people didn't really approach me. It's like I wasn't legible to them. They didn't notice me, or if they did, it was more as like a kind of like a sideshow rather than maybe a sexual being.
Yeah. So something to be
Mhm.
observed but not welcomed in.
And it wasn't that people were unfriendly;
Yeah.
they just weren't responsive.
Yeah. I think the reason that
Mhm.
I'm asking follow up questions and that I'm looking at you in this kind of squinty face way, so apologies, is because I think this is quite a common response. And potentially everything that I'm about to say is not related at all to your circumstances, so feel free to tell me to shut the fuck up. But I think there's this interesting anticipation of going to queer spaces when you've never had access to queerness or queer people or queer anything. There's almost an inevitability that you're going to feel let down in those spaces because you're like, yeah, I'm going to go there and they're going to understand me. No one's ever understood me before. Suddenly this group's going to understand me. And you get there and you're like, hey, everyone. And then if they don't understand you immediately or respond to you in the way that you're anticipating, you're just like, oh, maybe I'm the problem.
I think you're right about that in many regards. You know, there is this expectation that, oh, you're going to be among your people. And I did not feel that way. I did not. One, I thought bar spaces were boring. And
Well, was there a pool table?
thank goodness for the pool tables, but they weren't in the gay bars, you
Yeah,
know?
okay,
Yeah, there was no action and conversations were really difficult to have, even. And in the gay bars, at least from my perception, everyone was kind of on the hunt.
yeah.
And I didn't appreciate that space. I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready to be viewed as sexy. I certainly didn't think of myself as sexy. I didn't want to be sexy per se. I wasn't like standing in the corner, like, posing, duck lipping. I wasn't, looking off with disinterest
Ooh, that is a
intentionally,
move that
right?
never works for me.
It doesn't really work for anyone, in my opinion. But I was more interested in engaging with people and getting to know them, on a deep level. That was exciting to me. Bars did not permit that. So the gay bar space for me, which were my first interactions with the gay community, were not enjoyable. They
Yeah.
still aren't. That's not the space I found where I felt like I belonged. That would be the club later.
But so going to these bars, going to these spaces and having that like, yeah, I'm gonna finally meet some people, and then it being a massive wah wah wah. Like how did you have the energy to keep going, or how did you have the motivation to end up going to those clubs or keep trying?
Because the every once in a while at my very small southern college, some guy would come out, right? We would have like four a year. And
One a season or
no. Yeah, the coming out season. October.
Jeffrey, you're early.
And
Gosh.
right. Your bloom is gonna die before everyone else. They would come out and I loved being the steward. Like, oh, I know where a gay bar is, because that's what most of them wanted to do.
Wait, hang on, hang
So
on. You hated the gay bars, but when someone came out, you'd be like, let me take you to the gay bar.
yes, like because I liked the idea of facilitating other people's joy, and it would be more fun when I would watch them navigate it, especially if they were into it.
Ooh,
But
were you like a wise old soul type person that was like, yes, I remember my first
no,
visit?
but I did learn the art of wingmanning very quickly. Yeah, I did enjoy that.
Wait, wingman is the person that doesn't end up hooking up, or is there no
Right.
hierarchy?
No, they don't. Yeah, they help other people do it.
Oh, so you were pushing all these little ducklings into the lake and they were swimming off without you. I don't know why I'm coming up with that imagery, sorry.
I love it actually. I'm a water sign, so very much. Yeah, I really loved doing that because they wanted to do that. Whereas even though I wanted to make a connection, I didn't want to hook up at the bar.
Okay.
It just wasn't in my fantasy at that time.
What was
So
in your fantasy?
looking deep into each other's eyes, after a 6 hour conversation, and having that first kiss. I was a super romantic.
Oh,
And I typically was crushing on them, but they weren't crushing on me. So I
oh, okay. There are layers here. So you would be crushing on these people that you'd bring to the bar to introduce them to the gay scene, and then you would be acting as their wingman. They'd be going off and hooking up with someone else, and you'd be forlorn in the corner. You didn't say forlorn. I'm just imagining you forlorn in the corner.
you're projecting, kid. Only once in a while would I feel a sense of forlornness. But I mean, I didn't have crushes on all of them, but certainly the ones I did, yeah, maybe. But at the moment, it just felt more important to be a part of their journey. I thought that was real fun.
Interesting. Okay. And I want to ask questions about being a romantic. Have you been crushed down by the world and how cruel and horrible it is? Or are you still a romantic?
I'm definitely still the romantic. I've never been crushed down by the world. Um,
Not even
it's
for half a day?
um, there are certain kinds of heartbreaks, right? Whether romantic or otherwise, that I'll definitely lay on the floor and watch the ceiling fan spin 6,000 times. But I don't know. I'm pretty resilient in my optimism. I'm very blessed with that. It seems to be an inherent quality. So yeah, I would definitely say I'm still a romantic, but maybe not quite in the when Harry met Sally, you've got male oeuvre. I definitely have had enough life experience to understand that while the romantic sensibility is very much a part of me, it's not the Disneyfied version where it's like I'm going to meet the one and we will go off into the sunset. It's more like the beauty of connection with people is something I still very much live for, and I think that we are pretty extraordinary. And when two people allow themselves to connect and to access those extraordinary parts without fear, I mean, that's some of the best. That's the best moments. So I still ride on those.
Okay. So why don't we get to clubs, since that was
Yay!
where, and I quote you here, you would find joy. What club are we here to talk about today?
Backstreet was the gay club that I found joy.
And can you remember the very first time you ever went to Backstreet?
Absolutely.
Ooh, do you want to tell me about it?
Yes. I had gotten a job waiting tables at this place called Mix at Park Place. And it was my very first server job. And at the restaurant, there were a lot of gay blokes. And they were much more, city wizened. And so I was able to meet them. And, prior to that, I didn't really know what was going on in the Atlanta world, even though I lived in it, but I was in the bubble of my college. And so I didn't know where the nightlife was. We had guides that you would look in the back of Borders and Barnes and Noble for like the gay bars. We didn't have internet telling us where to go, and so a lot of things were still word of mouth. But a couple of the servers were gay and they were older, and they were like, "Oh, you got to go to Backstreet. You love to dance. You got to go to Backstreet." And I was like, "Okay, let's go to Backstreet." And they asked me to come over after a double shift. I remember that. So I still smelled like sweet potato fries.
Ooh, delicious.
And it was midnight and they wanted to pregame. And I was like, what time do you go to this thing? It's already midnight. And yeah, we pounded a couple drinks and then we went to the Midtown District. And there was a gigantic line. I remember that. Into this huge, huge space.
So tell me about the feelings when you're in the line.
Oh, I should have taken a shower. And everyone looked so fashionable. There was there was so much fashion. And I remember, people being like kind of shifting in place, and men and women were wearing makeup and were wearing kind of like baubles on them. This is very close to the rave scene that I got introduced to right afterwards. So, a lot of jinkos and shiny clothes. And I was excited about that. And, just hearing the thump, thump, thump.
Yeah.
It's going to be my very first club, let alone gay club. I was just so excited to be in a space where music was the centerpiece, and it was about dancing, and I beelined for the dance floor. Some people got drinks with their fake IDs or not fake IDs, depending on how old they were. And I went right to the floor and danced at least 3 hours without stopping.
And so when you made that comment before about the club being where you would find joy, is that joy linked to dancing and expression, or is there
Yes,
more to it?
there is definitely more to it. It was where I could connect to people and where I became legible to the queer community. Because, well, one, I can smoke a dance floor. So that obviously got me noticed in a favorable way.
Ooh, tell me about your moves then. What would I be expecting to see if I ran into you on a dance floor?
I mean, I'm from the Baltimore hood, It's like we know how, like, hip hop is in our blood. And I just had a very funky styling that was, both lyrical and also kind of hit. There was a little bit of pop and lock in me,
Okay.
but also some kind of lyrical fluid movement. And I danced with my hips. And it wasn't just about being noticed. That wasn't all it was. It was that I would see other people on the dance floor and they were enjoying it as much as me. Those moments when you just kind of disappear into the music and you close your eyes, and then all of a sudden you realize you have permagrin, like you smoked a big fat blunt. You're just so elated, and you open your eyes on the dance floor and you see other people doing the same thing, closing their eyes and just living for it. We would see each other across the dance floor, and it was like, oh, these are my people. We're seeing each other and we're sharing in each other's joy. And then sometimes that would lead to friendships. I would actually be approached on the dance floor, and people would say, like, you got some moves, or whatever they said. And it was just a way to connect where, here we are both queers, but we're not connecting because of being queer as much as our mutual joy for dancing. So that was really my entry into a queer community that I felt could recognize me and that I appreciated.
And had you had that experience before, like connecting? Oh, thinking ahead, the sentence I was going to say was a bit silly. Connecting over your bodies. Which then led to, oh, I don't know how to say it otherwise. But it sounds like the unique thing here, the thing that unlocked something in you and finally made you feel like free and accepted and a part of something bigger than yourself, was in expressing yourself non-verbally, that then led to verbal connection. Had you ever had that before? Because I know you studied dance and things like that. Has that always been a way of communicating?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm kinesthetic by nature. So I tend to communicate that way quite often. And I tend to understand that communication style as well in other people. So, yeah, I think then it being so pervasive
Yeah.
and in a space that actually expects and invites that, I was like, whoa.
But do you still dance at all or a lot?
You mean in public
Yeah,
spaces?
yeah.
Less and less, but I do. I mean, luckily I live in San Francisco, which isn't as ageist as a lot of, cities. So I think that's helpful. Like, I don't feel like I'm absolutely out of place. I used to live in Los Angeles, and the ageism there was overwhelming. I was called ugly twice, unprovoked, in like
Oh, okay. But ugly's different to old. You can be ugly and young. Maybe you are just ugly.
but in San Francisco, it's much more inviting and accepting.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are places I'll still go cut a rug.
Yeah, but I just like the reason that I asked that question is because if you are that type of person that connects in that way, and there are fewer and fewer opportunities as you get older, or you're self selecting out of those opportunities as you get older, it's how do you find an equivalent or something that still meets that need? But you've got many more dance floors to haunt in your lifetime, so that's good.
I hope so.
I want to talk about the people that you went there with. So you said that they were men that you worked with. I'm going to go out on a limb here and knowing what I know about you, knowing that you crushed on so many of those men from your school that you were introducing to the gay scene. And I'm going to say you had a crush on one or maybe more of these men that you worked with. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Do you want to tell me about it?
Well, okay, I had a couple stalwart,
Oh,
steady Judies. Two of them in particular. One's name was Tavoris, and the other was Kevin. And I did not have crushes on either one of them. They,
okay. Well, I don't care about them then.
but they would always go with me because they love to go dancing. But then, of course, there'd be the new employee.
Oh, yeah.
There was a series. But I didn't hook up with any of them. They didn't return the crush.
Well, I mean, that's good, really, because you don't really want to sleep with someone that you work with.
Good point. I don't think I ever have.
No, I don't think I have. But I started working somewhere, and then a month later, someone else started working there who I had relations with. So that was awkward.
Ooh.
But,
It's like, I know what your winky looks like.
yeah. Anyway, so you had crushes, but there's none specifically that are in mind that.
No, they're not people that I would go with. And very often I would modify them so that there was no issue with the friend group because I really loved my friends were the most important thing to me. And forming those deep connections with a group is something I never had until I went to college. And because of that, I just protected that space. So if I knew that they weren't interested in me, which was always the case,
Aw.
that's okay. I would quickly turn away from it. I wouldn't pine on that. But there were people that would be at the club who I would continuously see on the dance floor.
Oh.
That's where the crushes really happen.
Oh, that's dangerous though. Like if it's people that you're seeing on the dance floor, but you're not actually talking to or having conversations with, your mind can fill in all the blanks.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And even though I would consider myself a decent read of the way people move and how they move as an expression of who they are, of course, that's not everything. But many of these people I would wind up talking to every now and then because I would frequent the club enough, and so did they. So I was getting to know them to some degree, even though I wouldn't say it was some kind of profoundly deep conversations that we were having over thumping EDM.
It's really interesting you talking about this. So are you the type of person that doesn't make the first move?
I never did.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. The first time I ever made the first move, I was living in Los Angeles. I remember that day, and I was deep into my 30s.
So, is there an underlying reason why you don't?
Let me try to remember who I was then. Because I think a lot of it had to do with I would just presume that people wouldn't be interested in me. So I think it was partially that.
Oh.
And then just not knowing, how to engage that. It just didn't occur to me to do it.
But so it's possible that there are hundreds of men in Atlanta, Georgia, who reciprocated crushes on you, but were waiting for you to make the first move.
I highly doubt that.
No, it's possible. Like, what if they're even listening
But
now? Is there anyone that you want to just do a special shout out to just in case?
Dancing Eddie. Yes. Dancing Eddie.
Dancing Eddie, if you're listening, please get in touch.
Dancing Eddie, if you're alive, please acknowledge this podcast. He was so adorable. I mean, he made me look morose when I was out on the floor. He would just be grinning ear to ear. Granted, it was probably enhanced
Drugs.
by various
Yeah,
substances. Yeah. But I mean, was so into it that everyone called him Dancing Eddie. He would hear a song and people would just move out of the way for him because his eyes were closed and he just launched into full to his fingertips outward expression, pure bundle of joy, just tearing that floor up. And I thought he was the cutest thing ever.
Aww. But it does beg
Yeah.
the question, if his nickname was Dancing Eddie, what was your nickname?
Convulsing Miah.
But and so do you remember hearing about Backstreet closing?
Yes. I was at this time living in Los Angeles. I went to grad school out there, and friends of mine who had stayed in Atlanta after college, I mean, almost immediately called me, kind of like a friend died. Like, did you hear the Backstreet's closing? And it was a moment of nostalgic. We all were waxing nostalgic and lamenting just the closing of those kinds of spaces as a social space, as, coming together and being able to express ourselves. So yes, I remember that. I remember several different people independently contacting me to let me know.
And so if we think back to where we were at the beginning of the conversation when you were talking about the Miah that had just gone to bars and had not yet experienced clubs and had not yet flung himself on the dance floor, do you still feel that level of disconnection with other queer people?
No. I still get bored at bars. But I think I found through the club, I think I found my particular brand of sexy.
And what is it?
Embodiment. Being authentic with the way my body wants to move, not policing my body. Understanding its own rhythms and not being afraid that those rhythms are out of the marching orders with others.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think I just found my own brand of sexy through dance, and now I feel comfortable in those spaces. And I look forward to connecting to people, even though, again, bars are boring, so it's it's not so easy to do, But now I allow myself to be in the space, to communicate with people with my eyes. I'll flirt, and I now know how to flirt.
Why not your body?
Oh, always that. But you can't see a body when it's packed in,
I don't know.
I mean, if it wasn't for the club, I wouldn't have ever figured out my brand of sexy.
I love that phrase. I'm going to start using it in sentences. My brand of sexy. I wonder what my brand of sexy is.
Yeah, what is it?
I don't know. Asking intrusive questions, maybe?
Yeah?
Poking at people's trauma. That's not good.
Actually, I think there is a whole dating oeuvre for that. I think you're going to mop up.
Oh yeah, I don't want to. Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm going to have to think about this a bit more. I'll get back to you with alternatives.
Okay.
So, I want to revisit the question that I asked you at the beginning of this conversation. And it was that long-winded one about being face-to-face with the 1995 version of yourself and getting the opportunity to give him words of advice, would you change your answer? Can you remember your answer as well?
I could probably modify it because the more I kind of allow that question to come in, the more I think about who I was then. The gay community, I didn't feel like it was very kind to me in the beginning. And that could be my own perception, specifically gay men.
They are the worst.
Because of my inscrutability, it wasn't that they were being cruel, but I didn't feel very welcome. There was a while where I tried to change my mode of expression as a result, as we all do, right? We're all trying to conform, sadly. And what I would say to my baby gay is, don't do that. You basically retarded your embracing of your own brand of sexy as a result, because you felt like you weren't sexy, so you tried to figure out ways to be legibly sexy, and none of those worked because they weren't your authentic self. And it wound up taking me a lot longer to come into myself as as kind of like the sexy being that we all are. And that sucks.
All of us?
Yeah, we all are.
Okay.
We have to embody it. It's an embodiment thing. It's an acceptance of the relationship that you have to your body. And so I was there. I was already there. I just didn't think that anyone appreciated what that was because it was so different, or at least I perceived it as being different. And it's like, dummy. Yeah, I probably would have mopped up if I would have just kind of stayed the course and, embraced, that little hippie gay that I was, and I would have found my tribe. But, I tried to conform a little too much. And so, it took me longer than it should have. I really admire those people that figure that out early on.
Oh, yeah. Or too lacking in self-awareness to notice.
Yeah, that's even better. That is the sexiest person of all. Right? The one that's not even aware that they're not aware.
Is that sexy? I don't know.
I don't know. I think it is.
If you loved hearing Miah's story, then why not reach out to him on social media and let him know? He can be found on Instagram at Miah Jeffra. And I'm about to spell that. If I do it too fast, rest assured that all of this information is in the show notes for this episode. Miah's name is spelled Miahjeffra. Brilliant. And if you're interested in finding out even more about Miah, might I suggest checking out his writing. His most recent novel, American Gospel, is out now at all good bookstores. Whilst you're perusing the internet and looking for people to follow, why not find me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Lost Spaces Pod. Once again, it's been a delight. Thank you for giving up an hour of your life and joining me for this conversation. My name's Kay Anderson, and this is Lost Spaces.